There's a version of this story where the Cessna 177 Cardinal becomes one of the most beloved light aircraft ever built. Cleaner lines than the Skyhawk, no wing struts, more cabin room, a stabilator instead of a conventional tail. By almost every objective measure, the Cardinal was the more modern airplane. Cessna's engineers knew it, their marketing team knew it, and yet, within a year of its introduction, the Skyhawk it was supposed to replace was outselling it, and the Cardinal was already fighting for its survival. That's the paradox I keep coming back to when I think about the 177. Cessna built a better airplane in almost every sense you would care to define, and then watched the market reject it anyway. Not because buyers were stupid, because Cessna had rushed something out the door that did not quite work yet, and in aviation, first impressions do not just fade, they follow you. To understand why this happened, you have to understand what Cessna was trying to solve in the mid-1960s. The 172 Skyhawk had been in production since 1956. It was honest, reliable, and unspectacular, a high-wing trainer that pretty much any competent student pilot could handle. It sold in enormous numbers, and that success was both a strength and a trap. By 1965 or so, Cessna's product planners were looking at the 172 and seeing something that was starting to feel dated. The Piper Cherokee was gaining ground in the trainer market. The industry was talking about modern design, cleaner aerodynamics, better visibility, more usable cabins. The answer, Cessna decided, was a clean sheet replacement, not an incremental improvement to the 172. A completely new airplane that would make the Skyhawk obsolete. That airplane became the 177 Cardinal. It had a cantilever high wing, no external struts cluttering the view, a wider cabin, larger doors that made getting in and out genuinely easier, and a stabilator instead of the conventional stabilizer and elevator combination. On paper, the Cardinal looked like 1968 talking to 1956 and winning easily. Test pilot Bill Robinson flew the prototype for the first time on July 15, 1966, and that is where the trouble started. The stabilator was the critical design choice. In theory, a stabilator, a single moving horizontal surface that provides both pitch trim and pitch control, is more efficient than a conventional setup. Piper had been using them for years, and they work, but getting the pitch feel and authority right requires careful calibration. You need the right combination of anti-servo tab geometry and control forces so that the airplane feels stable and predictable across the full speed and center of gravity envelope. On the prototype, it did not. Robinson's early flights revealed that the stabilator needed significant development work before it was anywhere near ready for production. The pitch behavior was off. The airplane had a tendency to porpoise, to bob nose up and nose down in an unsettling rhythm, particularly during approach and landing. This was not subtle, it was noticeable, the kind of thing a student pilot on short final does not want to be dealing with. Any test program has findings. That is what test programs are for. The question is what you do with them, and how much time you are willing to take to work through the problems before you start shipping airplanes. Cessna was under competitive pressure. The Cardinal had been announced. Dealers were expecting inventory. And so the 177 went into production in 1967 and reached buyers in 1968, with the stabilator issues not fully resolved. The 1968 model year launch was, by any reasonable assessment, a disaster in slow motion. According to reporting in Cessna Flyer, Cessna had taken approximately 1,100 Cardinal orders at the big Wichita introduction. The airplane looked good, the marketing was sharp, the promise was real. And then, people started flying them. The porpoising behavior that had shown up in testing was still there, not on every airplane and not in every condition, but reliably enough and visibly enough. That word got around fast. Early Cardinal deliveries were showing pitch instability on approach. Pilots who had transitioned from the docile, predictable 172 found the Cardinal's handling unexpectedly demanding in the pattern. In the hands of a lower-time pilot, who is exactly the buyer Cessna was targeting, that's not a nuisance, that's a problem. Reorders after that initial wave? Fewer than 100 by the same account. I want to let that number sit for a moment. Cessna had introduced an airplane to enormous fanfare, over 1,000 initial sales, and the market's response, once people actually flew it, was to walk away. Fewer than 100 pilots came back to place a follow-up order. That's not a slow sales quarter, that's a verdict. Cessna responded. To their credit, they didn't ignore the problem. A series of modifications followed. Most significantly, stabilator slots were incorporated. The fix documented in Cessna Service Engineering Order SE 6814, part of what Cessna called Operation 23. These slots altered airflow over the stabilator surface in a way that improved pitch damping and reduced the porpoising tendency. The change was applied to early production airplanes and carried forward into subsequent model years. The 1969 Cardinal was improved. The 1971 Cardinal RG, the retractable gear version, was a genuinely accomplished cross-country machine. And through the early 1970s, Cessna kept refining the 177. A 180-horsepower engine replaced the original 150-horsepower unit, improving what had been, in the early cars, a fairly sluggish climb rate. The airplane got better every year. But here's the thing about product reputation. Especially in a market where the buyers are primarily private pilots who talk to each other constantly, read the same magazines, and cross-reference their own experience against everything they've heard. Once a narrative exists, it's almost impossible to overwrite it. The early Cardinal had given people something to talk about, and what they talked about wasn't the wide doors or the unobstructed wing view. It was the pitch behavior, the porpoising, the approach that required more attention than a 172 did. The Skyhawk didn't have that story. The Skyhawk was boring. Boring was suddenly worth a lot of money. By the mid-1970s, the situation had stabilized into something almost ironic. The Cardinal, particularly the Cardinal RG, had found a loyal following among more experienced pilots who appreciated exactly what Cessna's engineers had been aiming for. A slippery, fast-climbing, comfortable cross-country airplane with better visibility than most of its competition. These pilots flew the Cardinal well and loved it. Many of them still do. Meanwhile, the 172 kept selling. It kept selling in the 1970s. It kept selling after Cessna restarted production in the 1990s. It keeps selling today in the form of the 172S Skyhawk SP. Over 44,000 Skyhawks have been produced, making it the best-selling aircraft in history by a very wide margin. The Cardinal, across its entire production run from 1968 to 1978, reached somewhere around 4,300 airplanes total. Cessna discontinued the Cardinal in 1978. They kept building the Skyhawk. I personally think about that decision every time someone tells me the aviation market rewards progress. Sometimes it does, and sometimes progress arrives 2 steps ahead of confidence, and confidence is what people are actually buying. Today, the Cardinal has something it was never quite given in its own time, a reputation it earned rather than a reputation it was handed. Pilots who fly the RG in particular talk about it with genuine affection. Fast cruise speeds for a fixed-gear era airplane. Excellent visibility, a wide cabin that still feels generous by modern standards. The early pitch issues are understood, documented, and in properly maintained airplanes with the stabilator modifications in place, not a serious operational concern for a prepared pilot. The general aviation community's verdict in 2025 is more nuanced than the verdict of 1968. Back then, the Cardinal was the airplane that scared people. Today, it's often described as underappreciated, an airplane that deserved better than the introduction it got. Which is probably true, but that also feels a little like saying a candidate deserved to win the election they lost. The voters made a decision, even if it wasn't the right one on the merits. Cessna handed the market a genuinely superior design with a genuinely significant flaw, at a moment when the competition was offering a less sophisticated but thoroughly proven alternative. The market chose proven. You can argue with the logic. You can't argue with 44,000 airplanes. The Cardinal's story isn't really about a bad airplane. It's about what happens when a company lets its timeline override its test program and then has to watch the consequences play out in every hangar conversation and every sales meeting for the next decade. Cessna got the airplane right eventually. They just didn't get it right first. And in a market where your competitor's previous model is sitting right next to yours on the flight line, looking exactly as reliable as it always did, being right eventually isn't always enough. The 172 didn't beat the Cardinal because it was better. It beat the Cardinal because it had already proven it wasn't worse. If this kind of story is what you come here for, the gap between what an airplane was supposed to be and what it actually became, hit subscribe. And if you've got a type in mind you think deserves this treatment, drop it in the comments. Some of the best leads I've had came from down there.